Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Congressmember Karen Bass, and I want to welcome everyone here as we begin to launch the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth. I'd like to thank everyone that's here today, including my colleague who is not with us today, Congressman Tom Marino, will not be able to join us today, but he's one of the co-chairs of the Congressional Youth Caucus. On any given day in the United States, there's nearly 500,000 children in our foster care system. Oftentimes, these children are removed from home because of neglect and abuse. And as representatives of the government, if you think about it, when you remove a child from their home, then we become their parents. And it is really our obligation to make sure that these children are treated as we would treat our own. Last year, we formed the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth, and we held 2 briefings to go over the state of the foster care system in our country. Just last weekend, we launched the first session of what we're calling a listening tour, where we went to Los Angeles, California, and we visited a couple of organizations as well as the Children's Court, which is the first children's court in our nation. We had an opportunity to have a town hall meeting with youth, parents, advocates, professionals who are in the system, because most of us believe that many ideas happen here in Washington, but the best ideas and innovative practices happen in our communities. I want to introduce my colleagues that are here with me today, and I would like to begin with Congressman Jim McDermott. Jim McDermott has been a leader for many years in policy related to improving care for youth in the foster care system, and most notably over the last couple of years was the Fostering Connections legislation, which allowed states to pass legislation to continue resources to young people after they quote-unquote age out of the system at age 18. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Jim McDermott.
She's right there.
No, go ahead.
Hi. Let me begin by pointing out something to you so you see it. This is the Congress at its best, dealing on a bipartisan basis with an issue. There's a lot of things over here that aren't going very well because of the partisanship that's going on, but the fact that you have Republicans and Democrats involved in this is a statement that children really are above the politics of what goes on in this country. They ought to be. Now, in a time like this, it's easy to let them slide off the table because people say we don't have any money, or things are too tight, or we have to let people go. This is not the time to do that. Most of the children who are involved in this whole area are children who've been sort of forgotten about or allowed to be slipping out of people's attention or have been abused or whatever. And it's no time for us in the Congress to be doing that. And we have tried to move forward. Actually, this year, Jeff Davis, who I wish was here, is a Republican from Kentucky, and I got a 4E waiver. Now, the 4E money that's a federal technical term for the Social Security Act of money that goes for foster kids. We allowed money now to go out to the states, and they could apply for a waiver to do creative things to help kids who are in foster care. Right now, the law says that we will only provide money after we've taken a kid out of a house and put them somewhere. This waiver will allow youngsters to stay in their home and use money to help keep them there and deal with the family problems that often lead to removal of a child from a home. And my belief is that there are many problems. We had a hearing, as Ms. Bass pointed out, and it's good to have her from California because she brings lots of experience from a big state. But it's one of the things has been the whole use of drugs and psychotropic drugs. And we put in the law that we required them to have health care plans be put forward. And then we had hearings on whether people were using too much psychotropic medication. As a child psychiatrist, I know that sometimes people want kids to be quiet. And if you give them drugs, you can get them to be quiet. But that may not be in their best interest. So we wanted to make sure that we were not overusing psychotropic drugs. The department has now begun to implement regulations, and the states will be developing plans to make sure that kids get reviewed when they're put on medication. The idea that we put kids on medication and never review it, or that they wind up at 18 and aging out and suddenly you stop their medication, makes no sense whatsoever. So this caucus has a very clear objective. That is to make sure that we look after what happens to kids in this country when other people don't pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman McDermott. I'm happy to introduce next my colleague, Michelle Bachmann. Many of you probably know that Congresswoman Bachmann has been the proud foster parent of many youth who were in the system that she successfully helped emancipate and go on to college. Congresswoman Bachmann and I also co-chair the Congressional Caucus, the House Caucus on Adoption. Congresswoman Bachmann.
Thank you. Why don't you stay up here? Jim, why don't you come up here too? I just want to say thank you to both Congresswoman Bass and also Congressman McDermott, because I want you to just get a good look at this. We really are one. You don't see it. That's right. You don't see it. You don't see it very often, but I want you to know we are. That's right. Come on up here. We are absolutely united. Daniel Webster said, "One heart, one cause, one country." And we're here to say we are one heart, one cause, one country. And that's our cause as children. Because we absolutely believe in the kids, every single child, no matter what their family circumstance, and most particularly, these beautiful representatives that are up here, they see that kids that come out of challenging circumstances need us united more than they need us divided. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand in this caucus together to make sure we do whatever it is. We will try to move heaven and earth to help children who are in challenging circumstances, because we love them. We love them no matter their ethnic background, no matter their family background, no matter their economic background, because we have seen firsthand, our hearts have been broken by the challenges and the circumstances of these kids. They need stability. And they don't need bureaucratic missteps. We don't want to be drugging kids for the sake of drugging kids. We want to help these kids. We want them to thrive. We want them to soar. So we know that their lives won't necessarily be perfect, but if we can do something to make them better, we will. And so we want you to know we are determined. One heart, one country, one cause. This is not partisan. This is about kids. And I can't say enough about my colleagues that are up here. We stand united.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to now introduce Representative Schilling, who is also a member of the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth, and we have co-sponsored legislation together. Representative Schilling.
Thank you, Karen. You know, I want to give Karen a round of applause just for leading the way on this, because this is a pretty important issue. I've got to say, as a father of 10, or as I tell some folks, we have 4.5 dozen because we have 4 girls and a half dozen boys. You know, this is something that is truly near and dear to my heart. My sister is a foster parent, and you know, I always reflect back to a story that I heard from a Teacher of the Year award, Guy E. Dowd, and he was talking, and some of you might have heard this before, but he was talking about a man that was walking on the shore, and there's this young kid on the shore, and there's a ton of starfish that had washed up, and the kid was picking them up and throwing them in as quickly as he could, and the man came down and asked the kid, he goes, you know, hey, what are you doing? He says, I'm saving starfish. And the gentleman says to him, he says, well, you can't save them all. He says, well, I can save this one. He picked another one up and threw it out. And you know, I think what a lot of these kids are looking for is just an opportunity. And I think it's something that we definitely need to stand by, and it needs to be a bipartisan issue, as we're showing here today. And you know, this is an easy issue, I think, for all of us here today, is that this is one of those red, white, and blue issues. But I just want to thank Congresswoman Bass for taking the lead, and for also inviting me in and helping me you know, lead the way and help you. So I just appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, who is from the Miami area, will serve as hosting our next listening tour, which will take place at the end of March. Congresswoman Wilson.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bass. Let me say to you that the entire Miami-Dade County community, Fort Lauderdale, the whole South Florida, is excited that this listening tour is coming to South Florida. I think Florida has the highest percentage of children in foster care who find themselves in some sort of trouble. Many of you will remember Rilya Wilson, the young lady who went missing in Florida, and for 15 months it was not reported. So when Congresswoman Bass came to me and told me she was going to begin to put together a foster care committee to caucus to look at these kinds of issues, I wanted to just hug her neck. And when she told me that Michelle Bachmann would be the co-chair with her, I said, well, we'll get national attention. This is going to be wonderful for these children. So I want to thank you for selecting Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida as the next step, the next stop on the tour, March 30th. It will be in our commission chamber. It will be taped, and we're going to be watching the murder trial of the woman who is accused of killing Rilya Wilson, which makes this event very, very timely. We have so many incidents in Florida. We have blue ribbon commissions who the governor appoints, and for 6 months, the system runs well. Then another child goes missing or is beaten to death. Then there's another blue ribbon commission. The state pours money into the system, so we can say that it's broken. It's broken, and as a caucus, let's hope that we can come up with ideas and fresh innovations to fix the system that we all know is broken for these foster children. Thank you, Karen.
We've been joined by Congresswoman Laura Richardson from Long Beach, Los Angeles area, and she participated with us on Friday for our listening tour. Congresswoman Richardson.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to make just a few points. First of all, I want to say a special congratulations to Congresswoman Bass and also her co-chair, Ms. Bachmann, and the other colleagues who are here. I think the fact that you see such a balance on both sides of the aisle speaks to the fact that the voices of foster children is a voice that we all share, and it should not be political. It should be one of young people who need advocates. And foster children, I think, unlike many other children who may not have the stability of parents and other resources available to be organized and have that voice, that's what makes it all the more important that here in Congress we would take up that mantle for them. I want to speak a little kudos to Ms. Bass that her concern of foster care is not a new one. I had an opportunity to serve with her in the state assembly, and she led landmark legislation on the state level, one of the largest states in the United States, to make these changes for our youth. And so I'm not surprised that she would come here in Congress and do the same. Finally, I just wanted to say a little bit about my area and what I'm concerned about and why I'm so committed to this caucus and plan on standing in lock arms with my colleagues here. And that is issues of emancipation, issues of being able to keep families together, issues of how we can combine services, which is one of the big things that we learned in the listening tour in Los Angeles. How can we combine services to provide the best care for our foster youth and for those who assist them? So I'm excited that it is raised to this level to get us the focus so that more importantly we can get legislation passed and help the thousands of young people, due to no fault of their own, are in this situation and need voices and advocates. Thank you.
Who better to speak to us about foster youth than a young woman who is very successful and who is an alumni of the Foster Youth Foster Club, Janessa Center.
First off, I just wanted to thank everyone for allowing me to be here and talk about my story and advocate on behalf of all foster youth in the country. And my name is Janessa Lee, and I grew up in the foster care system around my teenage years. I entered the foster care system in middle school, and I can remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember getting a pink slip while I was sitting in school, and there was a worker at the office, and she told me that she was taking me to shelter. And I also had two sisters as well, and I had no idea where they were going. So immediately, I was put into this really confusing situation. And so as time went on, during my time in foster care, it became apparent that reunification was no longer the goal. And so I had a CASA volunteer, my social worker, and my GAL who sat down with me, and they talked and they asked me, they said, what do you want to do with your case? They asked me for my voice, and they listened to what I wanted to happen with my case. And I was shocked during this time because no one had ever sat down with me and asked me what I wanted in my foster care story. And around the time that I turned 18, I was on my own, and I dealt with many of the situations that a lot of youth transitioning from care deal with. So that'd be maintaining education, employment, housing, all of those things. And the normal things that we get, that a lot of you have gotten growing up, having someone help you fill out the FAFSA, those were not things that were provided to me, and those are not things that are always provided to youth who are exiting care. Eventually, after turning 18, I got involved in advocacy and going around the country and speaking for youth, finding my own voice. I participated on the local youth board in Iowa. It used to be called Elevate, and now it is called AMP. And I also became an intern for Foster Club in Seaside, Oregon, where I got trained in advocacy, and I traveled around the nation to tell my story and to advocate for other foster youth. And during this time, I really got the chance to find my voice through advocating for other people. And I learned about the goal of permanency for foster youth because it was never mentioned to me before. And it's something that it should be mentioned to everyone. We should know about it as soon as we enter care. But here I was 21 years old and did not know that permanency was important in order for me to reach all of my goals. And so through finding my voice, I was allowed to look to a trusted adult and say, hey, I really care and love about you, and I would like for you to stay in my life for the rest of my life. And just kind of you gotta put yourself in that situation of a foster youth. It's very awkward to have to ask for, will you stay in my life for the rest of my life? It's something that a lot of people take advantage of, and you usually it's obtained to you by birthright, and this is something that we have to learn and know that it's important and able to ask for it. And so I like to fast forward to where I am today. I'm 22 years old, and I'm a criminology major at the University of Northern Iowa, and I'm a senior, and I kind of just wanted to pinpoint at the fact that I would not have been able to enter college and get to where I am today if I had not achieved permanency. Permanency is one of the most important things for foster youth because permanency provides many of the things that they don't have, like education, employment, having someone to teach you how to open a bank account. Permanency is the #1 most important thing in dealing with foster youth. And permanency, if you don't know what it is really just having one trusting adult in your life who is going to pledge to always be there for you, just as your parents or whatever other important adults in your life have done for you. And I just also wanted to stress that it's the people who come into our lives and listen who are the ones who make the biggest difference. And I would like to thank the Congressional Caucus on Foster Care for starting this and really listening to the voices of youth. And I just ask that you continue to include our voices in changing policy and letting the country know about the issues in foster care. Thank you.
You know, there's many things about this work that I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about bringing both my colleagues on both sides of the aisle together with the commitment to work on behalf of our children. But I'm also very excited about the numerous organizations that are involved in this work, that have been involved with this work for years, and who are providing key support to our efforts in Congress. The Casey Family Foundation is an organization that I have worked with for many years, well before joining the State Assembly, and I'm very happy to say that they are our key partner here. In California, we had David Sanders, who attended the listening tour with us, and here with us today, I'm pleased to say that we have the CEO of the Casey Family Foundation's William Bell.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bass. And, you know, Casey Family Programs is the largest operating foundation in the country that is focused on not just improving foster care, but also preventing the need for foster care by building stronger communities around our young people. And that requires leadership. And so I'd like to thank Congresswoman Bass, Congresswoman Bachman, Congressman McDermott, and the other members of the House for their leadership and their focus on the House Caucus on Foster Youth. And the first step in leadership is having the ability to listen. And as Janessa just talked about, her life was changed because somebody was willing to listen to her. And in 2006, Casey Family Programs began what we call our 2020 strategy for America's children. And the focus of that strategy is to influence a 50% reduction in the number of children in foster care by the year 2020, and to improve outcomes in education, employment, and mental health. Since we started that, we've seen over 100,000 children be removed from the foster care system in this country. And that's worthy of celebration. But the challenge is there's so much more to be done. And we stand committed to working with members of the House in their efforts to change what's going on in this country. Right now, still over 30,000 young adults walk out of foster care every single year in this country simply because they're now too old to stay there. And we believe that the challenges that they face are challenges that they don't have to face if we're different. And the way that I believe that we can be different is by building communities of hope around our children. Government was never intended to be a parent. People are. And those of us who think that we are strong today, we probably think that we are strong because we had strong communities and strong support services around us as we grew up. Every child in America deserves that. Every child in America deserves to grow up knowing that there's somebody who is saying, I will be there for you no matter what. And as we go through this listening and the education process that will come from this listening tour, I am hopeful that America will finally become that strong nation that says none of our children will ever fall, because we will always be there for them. And that we will all live to believe that there's only one standard for our children. And Estaquio Beltran taught me this. That is the standard of your own. If it is not good enough for your own children, then it is not good enough for any child in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Now, let me mention several of the other organizations that are here today and are key partners in our work. The American Public Human Services Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the Congressional Coalition on Adoption, the Alliance for Children and Families are all organizations that are involved in this effort. A key partner in the effort to improve the outcomes for youth in the foster care system is the National Council on Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Our final speaker today, Judge Patricia Martin, will speak in a minute, but I would like to acknowledge the judge and the head of the juvenile court in Los Angeles, Judge Michael Nash. Join me in welcoming our final speaker for the morning, Judge Patricia Martin, who is the president of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges. Thank you.
Congresswoman Bass, thank you so very, very much for the opportunity to partner with you on such a wonderful initiative for our country and for all of our children nationwide. It is a delight for the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges to join the forces of the leadership of the House to make certain that we take care of our children. Congress has given us mandates and given us direction on what we need to do through federal law such as ASFA, such as Fostering Connections. And it is working now, but we need the ability to work with Congress to make certain judges are trained, specially trained, to make certain we are able to take care of our children, to provide permanency for our children in a way that is real permanency for each and every one of them. Mr. Bell indicated to us that the state is not a good parent, and I think we all recognize the fact that each and every one of our children deserves to stay in their family, to look at the family as a family unit, to treat the family holistically, to make certain the family has an opportunity to connect with community-based services so that when the valleys of life come by, they have a way to reach out and a way to help cure themselves and not keep coming back into the court door. The court and the state are not good parents. We need to strengthen our parents to take care of our children. Lastly, I just want to state on behalf of the entire membership of the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, we are delighted and feel honored to have the privilege to work with Congresswoman Bass and others on the coalition activities. We are looking forward to the opportunity to make certain that we can provide the services and the wherewithal and oversight for our children in foster care, but most importantly, make certain we change the paradigm so we keep kids safely out of foster care, and the kids who are in foster care get them safely into permanent homes and families. Thank you so much, Congressman Bass.
Now I'd like to ask if members of the press would like to ask any questions about the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth. Yes. Could I ask the members to join me up here, please? Everybody move forward.
Hi, Michelle from Daily Caller. Can you explain why you guys chose to examine the use of mind-altering drugs as your first major initiative? Why this issue?
Well, I think I'm going to say a little bit, but then I would like to ask Mr. McDermott, who's done some key work in this area. This is an issue that has come up repeatedly. I know even before I came to Washington, D.C., and going up and down the state of California and having focus groups with foster youth, parents, professionals, etc., you hear over and over again about the use of psychotropics and then questions as to whether or not they're used in the appropriate manner. So I would like to ask Mr. McDermott to comment, and then if the judges would like to comment as well.
Well, I alluded to it when I made my remarks, but the use of psychotropic medicine has escalated in this country since I started practicing medicine some years ago, and certainly in children's, in pediatric medicine. And the use of it has been, in some places, not very well supervised. The question that has to be raised is, who has the ability to make informed consent if a child is going to have medication given to them? Is it the worker in the Department of Children's Services? Or is it the foster parents? Or who is it? And that issue is led to a lot of overuse and in some places just bad use of psychotropic medicine. So what we're trying to do is to focus in the Congress on this issue so that the Department of Health and Human Services would require states to develop their own plan. We don't want a national plan. We don't want to say Washington knows everything. But what we do want is states to focus on this issue and look at what they're doing with the money that we're sending to them to take care of their kids. So it is really an oversight process that we are trying to make sure gets in place. It's real easy up here to send money out somewhere and then never know what happened to it. In this case, we are the parents. We are the parents for 500,000 foster kids or so. I used to say I was the godfather of 500,000 foster kids. Well, then it's my responsibility. If I've taken responsibility for those children, then it's my responsibility to find out how that money's put out there and what kind of medication they're getting. So we're trying to put that in place, and that's part of the listening tour. We've had hearings up here. The department has come in and told us what they're implementing, and now we're waiting for the states to gradually develop their programs. Places like California and Washington State, we have well in place review systems. Other states don't have them, and that's really what we're trying to do, is to make it not a question of what state you're in this country, whether you have good use of medications.
Tell me your licensed profession again. Your licensed profession.
Oh, excuse me, I guess she said I should say I'm a child psychiatrist. So I've actually done this. and so it's an unusual thing in Congress when somebody who knows something about an issue, usually they'll have a farmer or a truck driver or a school teacher or somebody. In this case, I actually do know what I'm talking about.
That's important.
I just wanted to mention that we know that the use of psychotropic drugs on a child's body is very serious and has serious side effects and serious ramifications. And we also know that numerous studies that have come out show that there are elevated levels of psychotropic drugs that are assigned to children in foster care and are used by them. We don't know for what period of time for all children, but we know that they can have long-term implications. As a mother of 23 foster children myself, and also involved in other support groups with other parents of foster children, we saw almost universally children were prescribed psychotropic drugs. And often before the children ever came to our homes, they were already assigned these drugs. And so we didn't have necessarily a say about it. But we were very concerned as parents with what we saw as the effects on the children. We just think that it shouldn't be just a given, that if a child is in foster care, that would mean that automatically paralleled, they would also be assigned psychotropic drugs. We think it's very important that a child, when they deal with the challenges of just being in foster care alone, shouldn't also be considered ground for also being assigned psychotropic drugs. So we just think this is something that's very important. It needs to be looked at. A child has enough challenges that we think that we need to superintend this issue as well. And I'm very grateful that this is an issue, something that we've seen for years and years and years. And I think it's important that we take a look at it.
Excuse me, Judge. Oh, Janessa, and then Judge Michael Nash.
I was never prescribed like psychotropic drugs while I was in foster care, but I know there is the issue of, let's say, youth being in foster care for 10 to 15 years and then they're aging out at 18 and they don't have access to health insurance, so they're no longer able to continue that, and that's also a problem. A lot of the youth who are aging out are the youth who they have mental health issues, but they're no longer able to even have them treated because they've been drugged for many years.
Judge Michael Nash.
Good morning. At least it's morning where I come from. I'm a juvenile court judge in Los Angeles, and we have the largest foster care system in the United States. In California, our judges, believe it or not, have the responsibility of approving all requests for psychotropic medication for children in our foster care system. In Los Angeles, each year our judges are asked to approve between 5,000 and 10,000 requests for psychotropic medication for children. We spend a lot of time on this, and of course we should spend a lot of time on this. It's important that we continuously examine how we approve these medications, why we approve these medications, and most importantly, how we monitor the use of these medications when the children take them. It's important also to note that I believe that the foster care system itself can never meet the appropriate standard, which is the standard of what a competent parent would do with respect to their children. But we have to continually strive to get as close as to that standard as we possibly can. So this is, yes, a very important issue for us, not only in Los Angeles, but nationwide.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the role of the federal government? Because when you think about foster care, it's generally you think of first county and then state regulation. So what exactly, besides handing out the money and putting restrictions, is the role of the federal government?
Well, the federal government plays a key role because most of the policy that the state and the counties are implementing begins on the federal level. So, for example, I mentioned when I opened Fostering Connections, which was a really important initiative because, as several speakers have said, when children turn 18, essentially what we do is, excuse my expression, but kick them to the curb. Which you can imagine anyone here that's old enough to have a child that age knows that they cannot survive without financial, emotional, and physical support. And so when Fostering Connections was passed, that allowed states to pass enabling legislation where they would have to do a match for federal resources. But also it's the standards that are set by the federal government. So it's a key role to play. And one of the things that we plan to do over time is really look at federal legislation and see what more needs to be done to improve the overall outcomes of youth in the system. And a lot of improvements have been made, which is one of the reasons why we want to go around the country to examine places that have had best practices that have reduced the number of kids in the system and improved their outcomes. Thank you very much. Final question? Thank you. Once again, thank everyone for coming out and attending the press conference and our launch of the Congressional Caucus on Foster Youth.
No, we're here.
We were here.